Welcome back to another episode of Life's Ambition Podcast. Today is the second part of the two-part series. Ed is going to give you his input on running his own real estate company with his family in this part of the conversation. Without further ado again, Ed Chatelain.
So Ed, I obviously understand that the ice cream business went really well for you guys. 14 years is a really long time, but how did you guys switch over to real estate, and why did it become more of a family thing versus doing it with just other business partners?
What happened is we had the ice cream shop, and when you have an ice cream shop or a coffee shop or a neighborhood bar, people come in constantly, and you kind of know what's going on in the entire neighborhood. So we found that people were constantly coming in and saying, "Do you know about any rentals? Do you know about any houses for sale?" And we were spinning them, "Oh yeah, there's a house for sale down the street, and talk to this agent," or whatever. And my wife, actually, it occurred to her more than me. She said, we're tripping people and putting money in their pockets when we could. If I got a real estate license, I could pick these buyers up and sell real estate in conjunction with the business, because we were pretty well established at the time. So she got a license and started selling real estate with at the same time as we had the ice cream shop, and it worked out very well. We're still selling houses from people that we knew when we had the ice cream shop. I mean, and that's 20.
Wow, talk about personal relations there.
Yeah, it's 30 years ago. So anyway, that's how we got started. And then it was so successful that I followed a couple of years later. And then she started in 1992. I was a couple of years later. And then we sold the ice cream shop because it was easier. Well, it gave us more flexibility and time to spend our time with our kids, our sons. And we proceeded that way until they went into school. They went to graduate school, and both of them rattled around for about 10 years off Cape. And then they came back, wanted to start families, and came back. And we spun off into our own firm. So it's our sons, Agnes and I, and we've got several other brokers with us. But that's kind of the evolution of the whole process. It's just, once you're in business, you don't want to confine yourself to a single business. You want to be able to evolve and to accommodate your own lifestyle.
And did you guys ever think that you guys would be doing a family business, let alone doing real estate together?
Not really. We didn't start out that way, and it was again, what happened is we had an entrepreneurial philosophy, and that's what we started when we started the ice cream shop. And then, as I just said, when you're in business, you don't ever walk away from business. So if you see an opportunity, you lever into it. And that's exactly what we did. I think, I don't want to speak for our sons, but I think they did pretty much the same thing. They were, one of them was a teacher, and the other one was he was basically a counselor down in Florida for troubled youths. And
so no one really had any prior knowledge of real estate going into it, or even like accounting or anything like that. This is everyone's completely separate background.
Absolutely. Ned had an anthropology degree. That's our eldest son. Paul had a biology degree with a master's degree in education, and Ned had a master's degree in theology. So very disparate backgrounds, all of us.
Which is like super cool that you guys were able to learn the game so quickly and be able to be where you guys are at now. In terms of like qualifications for it, is there just a certificate course that you got to take, or is there like schooling that you guys got to do? Anything like that?
To get into real estate, basically, all states require a certain amount of classroom training. And once you do the classroom training, which a person who aspires to get into real estate should try to attach themselves to an office that's large enough and that has basically the willingness to train you, because basically the courses, the Massachusetts courses basically teach you what the law is and what should be. Going out and learning to sell real estate is a whole different thing. It's all about networking, and a lot of that you've got to just learn on the job. So yeah, and the more education you have and the more varied your background, the better it is, I think, for anything that you pursue and anything that is involved in business. You want to have a broad approach to doing whatever you're doing. So not too narrow.
I'm sure it was really nice to build those connections with the ice cream shop. I know you said that you have people that you worked with from 30 years ago that are coming to you today. Did you find that helped out a lot when starting the real estate game, is that you guys already have some connections so you guys can spread word of mouth through the ice cream shop? And then once you guys got to the point where, all right, this is more sustainable and that you guys have a better schedule to be with your kids, then it just kind of helped out that much more?
Absolutely. You stay in contact with people. I believe I mentioned that we're also involved in our town. We live in a small town. It's about 15,000 people on Cape Cod. And we're involved in the town. We have, a couple of, now we're slowed down a bunch, but we've got a couple of volunteer positions that we have. My wife is on the Capital Improvement Committee. I'm on a West Dennisport Advancement Committee. These are town-appointed committees. Keeps your name out in front of people. My wife was also school committee chair for several years, and I've been on other things. And you keep a general presence by doing that, but also we do mailings a couple of times a year to people that we know. We have a newsletter that we email to people. You've just got to stay out front of everybody that you know and keep your connections and keep advancing them. And of course, what happens is if you sell a house or rent a house for someone, they'll say, oh, well, Uncle Fudd wants to sell his, and we were very pleased with what you did, so we recommended you. So that's basically how it works.
And what was it like for you guys at first? Had Mark Kaufman on the show, which I believe I mentioned earlier, is he's the original owner of Athletico Physical Therapy, and it was just him working the clinic, and eventually got to the point where he got to hire someone after business, and he did kind of the same thing you guys did, where it was reach out. But how did it start for you guys? Was it just you basically going around to all these different properties trying to create this revenue stream with your wife? How did you guys manage to start from point A and scale up from there?
Okay, what happened is my wife went to work for a company, a local firm, and they actually trained her pretty well. And then she moved to another firm when she became more, now I don't want to say confident. She was always confident, but more confident in the fact that she was generating enough business on her own and not spinning off the firm. She joined another firm, and I joined it with her, which was basically, their business model is a little different than most real estate firms in that they kind of just rented you desk space. And you didn't have to pay a commission to a percentage of your commission to the firm itself, you paid a set fee. So there was a set fee per deal to the company that we worked with, and we paid a desk fee. And that was it. So you could make more money, and basically you were allowed to work on your own more. As long as you were productive, they didn't care. Okay?
So
But
it's very independent work then.
it was very, very independent. We were there for a long time and probably wouldn't have changed, wouldn't have moved off, except our boys felt that we could do better by spinning off into our own little firm. And we're a boutique operation now. But they inspired us basically because we were getting to the point where we're approaching slowing down. I'm never going to retire until they take the keys away from me because I identify my personality is working. I always work, and I identify with business and work.
And well, it's tough because after so much time, like when you retire, I just have this feeling that after so much time, you kind of get bored in a sense. Like you can travel, do all that stuff, but you might be able to travel everywhere you want in a year or so or two. And then after 2 years, kind of just like looking at your significant other or whoever, and you're just like, well, I don't know what to do at this point.
I would find that is exactly what would happen with me. I have to stay busy, and I have to, like I said, I identify as a working person, and I will work as long as I can. And so retirement is not an option for me because you're right. We do travel. We take a couple of trips a year, but I want to come back and go to work again. It's just, again, now lots of people don't do that. Lots of people find different ways to fill their time, but I don't. And for instance, I have a friend who has 3 part-time jobs. He retired. He's got 3 part-time jobs, and we all knew that was going to happen. But and he kind of does stuff. It's not as demanding as he was an accountant, and it's not as demanding as being an accountant. The stuff that he does, but it's more fun for him and he enjoys it. But again, he still works.
Oh, yeah. And I was wondering for you guys, is there a difference really between residential real estate versus commercial real estate and the regulation piece of it? Obviously, I know commercial is going to be more your very compact areas, but there's a lot of apartment buildings and houses that can be in those kind of areas. So is it all the same? Is it all different?
It's very different. And in fact, one of the big benefits of real estate is you can take several different tacks in how you pursue the business. For instance, we sell primarily residential real estate, but we occasionally sell a small office building or something like that. I've sold warehouses, office buildings, a motel, things like that. But we're not super aggressive about it. You can also get into real estate and just do property management in urban areas, for instance. There are huge condominium complexes. You have to have a real estate license, basically, to do this. But you have condominium complexes that require a real estate license, and you manage the complex. You can do the same thing for commercial rentals. So depending on where you're located and what kind of personality you have, you can pursue all of those different things in real estate. And you can pursue more than one of them. There's one gentleman on Cape that does just rentals. He does year-round rentals. We do seasonal rentals. He does year-round rentals. And he's accumulated over the years a large number of apartment buildings on his own, because what happens is, he starts renting it for somebody and somebody goes, well, we don't want to rent it anymore. We just want to sell it. And he'll buy them. And he owns a whole bunch of units, starting 30 years ago with nothing, basically, but picked up opportunities as he went along.
And well, I'm sure in the Cape, with everyone wanting to go there in the summer or sometimes even in the winter, that's a hot commodity then to have rental properties. And when I'm thinking about commercial and residential, do you get more, as like a real estate person, more opportunities in the residential area that may give you a good amount of commission, but like not as much in the commercial area, or there's not much opportunity in the commercial area because it does take a long time for these buildings to come operational. But when those deals do become available and you get it, those can be worth a lot of money.
It we've concentrated on residential real estate simply because that was kind of our market niche from the very beginning. Like I said, we had this ice cream shop. People would come in and they mostly wanted rentals and houses to buy or whatever. We have occasionally sold, like I said, a commercial place, a commercial property, but it's just a focus of activity. And that's just what we've done. You're
So
right.
there's always going to be that stuff available,
Yes,
regardless of where
you
you
can do it. You
gotcha.
can do anything you want. It's just where we focused. Okay. And it was kind of an accident and it's done very well. We've done very well by it. So I don't intend to change. And yet, again, you don't walk away from money. I sold a motel once. Okay. Sold a couple of restaurants because these are people we knew or somebody found us somehow. And I sold property for them. But that's I always encourage people to be as flexible as you can in any kind of business endeavor because business generates business. So whatever you're doing, if you got to do something. You got to work at something, and it generates business.
Heck yeah. And I was where I was going with this question, to be like more of a subsequent with it, is I took a urban planning class in school, and with the pandemic and everything that happened, one of the new topics is where a lot of people are working from home, which prevents people from, or just not many people are going into like commercial buildings. And so that's why I was wondering more of like, is residential real estate exploding? And then commercial real estate is being like repurposed for restaurants on different floors or even apartment buildings. Like, I don't know if you've seen a lot of that even recently at all.
On the Cape, we don't see a lot of that.
Gotcha.
There just isn't that much there. First of all, there isn't that much. Mostly we have motels. We don't have any industry, for the most part. I mean, you can always find an exception here and there, but we don't have a lot of industry. So there's not a lot of that kind of stuff going on. What we are finding is some of the old village centers are being turned into what people call top of the shop housing, because there is a housing shortage in Massachusetts. Everybody, I don't know where. Actually, I don't know where you're podcasting from, but in
North
Massachusetts,
Carolina.
okay, North Carolina, we have a real shortage of housing in Massachusetts, and the new development is, instead of just having commercial properties, if you can put somebody on top of a shop, that's an appealing thing right now. So
Oh, so you guys do vertical integration of housing is just straight up, like let's just
mostly
build.
it's renovations. Yeah, mostly it's just renovations. It's just small apartments on top of, say, a restaurant or a dress shop or something like that. And it's not a big thing on Cape. It just isn't. Again, we don't have a lot of industry. We have some older village centers that works for, but the Cape is not like the rest of the country in many ways.
Yeah, well, if it's a housing shortage, are people not necessarily selling, there's not too much development. And if people aren't selling, the ones that are, is like the housing prices just going way through the roof than what they should be, in your opinion?
What's happened in Massachusetts, in fact, there was just an article in the newspaper this morning that was pretty good in the Cape Cod Times. Basically, Massachusetts is overregulated, and the zoning makes it very difficult for people to build a house and make. You can build a house and make money, but you can't build 1,000 square foot, 1.5 bath, 2-bedroom, 1-bath house. The zoning regulations are so draconian that, this is throughout Massachusetts, not just on the Cape, that people aren't building on Cape Cod. In fact, Massachusetts is second. It's, of all the states in the nation, it's 49th. Rhode Island is 50th as far as building new housing. Or in that
49th, you said?
Yes. That includes rental properties. Yeah. And it's because the towns are overregulated. We do have a relatively intensive population, but there's a whole series of reasons, environmental reasons, that maybe are a little too extreme. Maybe they're not. I don't. We could spend hours on just this subject. Yeah.
Are the regulations just making like materials cost more, the building construction costs more, taking it longer to do?
Well, what it does is to get, for instance, if you owned a piece of land and you apply for, you then have to have it subdivided. Okay. If it wasn't an already subdivided lot, then you've got to go through the permitting process. You can only, all of this costs lots of money. And if there's somebody that throws an objection up for whatever reason, you'll have to decide to change the way you build your building or whatever, whether it's an apartment complex or whether it's a house. All of that permitting makes everything super expensive. And then we're just now beginning to experience rising costs in lumber and stuff because of the current political situation. But then once you start building, you've got so much cost front loaded that you can't throw up, like I said, a small house. That would be a good starter home. You can't build a small apartment. There's not enough profit in it for most construction companies, because by the time you get all the front end finished, and then once you get into the construction, it becomes prohibitive. So what happens then is you only build 5,000 square foot mansions, because there's enough profit in there, there's enough space in there for you to make up for the work you've already put in.
So that's only targeting then the top 0.1% of people. And how does like all these regulations and pieces affect your relationship with the county government or like the state government or even just the builder itself? Does it make it hard for you to be able to kind of like find your own avenue and everything, or something different?
We sell primarily existing housing stock. We don't sell an awful lot of new housing. That's because on Cape, we're super environmentally sensitive area. So our town, basically the town of Dennis, is built out. You can occasionally find a lot that was subdivided years ago, but you can't find, like in more rural areas, little farms that are maybe 10 or 20 or 50 acres that you can buy and subdivide. That doesn't exist anymore. It used to, 40 years ago, 50 years ago on Cape, more like 50 years ago. But you can't find that anymore. So we're kind of built out. So the housing that is built is primarily larger properties, and we sell primarily existing properties. Rarely do you find a new home to sell. Occasionally, you never say never, but somebody will build one once in a while and they put it on the market and you can sell it. But generally, no. A lot of renovations. They're nice properties, but they're mostly pre-existing properties.
And that just goes back to what you said about how the Cape is small. So I'm assuming a lot of the development has already been made.
A lot of it has. The Cape had a real housing boom in the 1970s and again in the 80s. And when that happened, we really were built out. And again, there are some places that aren't built out, and you can never say never about anything. I've said that several times. I don't want to keep repeating it, but Dennis is pretty much built out. Yarmouth is an adjacent town; it's built out. Sandwich, I understand, has some property that there's some properties that are available there. But in the Mid-Cape area, these areas started developing back in the 1940s, right after World War II. And they were mostly, if you've ever been here, people mostly built summer cottages. Basically, they were tool sheds, okay, honest to God. And people used them in June, July, and part of August, and they were just summer camps. And now those almost don't exist anymore. When I first started selling real estate 30 years ago, we used to sell an occasional house that didn't have sheetrock on the walls on the inside. It was just studded walls. They were fun. They were great fun to sell. And actually, I sold one a couple of years ago like that. But just sweet little shacks that people used to have. And now, then in the 70s, 60s and 70s, people started building more substantial properties. And the buildable land got bought up.
Well, I just find this topic so interesting because I see on my feed all the time now at this point on like YouTube or whatever that people will get a rental property or buy a house or whatever, and then they'll rent it out to other people, pay for their mortgage, and then create a revenue stream, or they'll refinance the house so then whatever they added to it, they can get paid back on it. And I don't know if that's a revenue stream that you guys use as well.
Yeah, most real estate agents, I would say, successful ones have, they've had an opportunity to purchase a investment property, and they do. So it's a very
There's a lot of risk involved with that, though.
Absolutely.
If you don't have good tenants, because
absolutely.
A lot of people talk about doing it. Don't know why my feed's that way, but they all talk about doing it and doing it early so then you can just have that revenue stream for a long time. But what goes on in my head is just there's so much risk involved with, well, if something breaks down, you're paying for the cost. If they don't pay on time, you're paying for the cost because those deadlines have to be done at a certain time.
Yes, you're absolutely right. There is a lot of risk, but then that's business. You take risk and you measure your risks accordingly. You should have some cash on the side to fix things. But yeah, there's always risk in business, and the thing is to just figure out what you want to do and plan for it and try to work it as well as you can.
100%. And do you recommend that people start early in the real estate game or try and over time just build an understanding? So people in their 20s should get into it, or maybe later on, once people accrue some money, like whether that's with their job or just whatever they're doing, and then get into it later on?
I think you have to throw yourself into whatever business you're going to pursue. Being a hobbyist in anything is very difficult because it's just, you've got to be fully committed. Now, if you've got a job that has, and you have excess revenue, you can also be a landlord by buying either condominiums or commercial properties or residential properties. That works for a lot of people. But you've also got to be, like you said, aware of the fact that at 4:00 in the morning, somebody's going to say the septic system's backed up. And you've got to have the capacity and the resources to resolve that. It's not only money, but you've got to have a list of people that you can call and ask to be out and unplug a septic system, or repair an electrical service that goes out. And that's super important. But throwing yourself into a business is essential. You can't approach things halfway.
Agreed. Totally agree that you can't just half the effort of whatever you're going to do. And, I wanted to go back to your business with your family. Is everyone playing the same role, or are people playing different parts within the business itself?
What we do, we've broken it up. My wife and I sell real estate, and again, primarily residential. I would say 90% residential, and a little bit of commercial property. One of our sons is actually the sales manager for the office, and he kind of supervises everybody else. My wife is we call it the principal. She's the person that is responsible for the entire office. He's the sales manager because both of us, we run our own shop, my wife and I. Our other son, Paul, he runs the back office. He does all the accounting and that stuff. And he also does the seasonal rentals. And occasionally we do a year-round rental, but again, that's not a primary thing for us. We don't do that. But he does all the seasonal rentals, all the contracting for seasonal rentals and all. And he also has a business for watching houses, because we have a lot of second homeowners on Cape. And if we have a little nor'easter, you have to check the houses to make sure the electricity is working or that something hasn't happened. And he goes around once a week and inspects houses, makes sure there's no leakage, that nobody's broken into the houses, that animals haven't gotten into the attic, that kind of stuff. So we all have separate roles because that keeps peace in the family. Okay. And,
Nice.
It's good because a family business is interesting because you can't quit and you can't get fired. So you got to make sure everybody can live together. But yeah, we divide it up so that everybody has their little niche. We do, of course, we overlap. We had a staff meeting this morning because you have to know what's going on with everybody else. However, we try to stay in our own little niche because if you get involved in other people's stuff, you get into fights, and then there's no point in having a business together.
Exactly. It's never good when one family member is doing something and then it just creates havoc in the household, for sure. For sure. And for you guys, when did you know that you could start to bring on other people into the company and start to grow it?
As soon as we spun off from the firm that we were with, we immediately brought on a couple of people, and then
That's awesome.
Because we'd already had our eyes on these folks. You try to find people, identify people that will work, that have personalities that will work along with you and that are productive. You don't want somebody that's not productive. So we had our eyes on some people and we brought them in almost immediately.
That's super awesome. And congratulations to all your guys' success. I was wondering, last question here is, what's probably the most rewarding part for you when you look back on everything that you've done? Is it more the success piece, or is it more of what you've learned along the way and how you basically turn something you don't have any knowledge about into whatever, or your pretty successful overall businesses?
There's a lot of satisfaction in just having started basically from scratch and having built our own business. The thing that helps me get out of bed in the morning, and I think this is important for everybody in every business that you're in, it's not just about the money, but probably 85% or 80% of the business that we do is just pro forma. Drew comes in and he wants to buy a house, so we sell him a house, and then he might want to rent some of the seasonal business. So our son Paul does that. That's pro forma. It's easy peasy stuff for the most part. When I say easy peasy, it's every deal's different and every deal has its worries. Okay. But that's just pro forma stuff. The stuff that I think makes me happy to get out of bed is when, for instance, I can find a first-time home buyer a nice property, or I can find. We work with a lot of elderly people here on Cape, and they have to be relocated, maybe to a rest home or something, and we're able to sell their house for them and help them relocate. That makes a lot of difference for me. Or if it's somebody that I know and I'm fond of, and I help them get into or get out of a difficult situation, that's also real satisfying. But that to me is what makes this business worthwhile. Not only the money, but the fact that occasionally you feel like you're doing something good, just purely good.
That's awesome, Ed. And I really do appreciate you being on the show today. It means a lot. And I wish you all the best with your business and everything on your adventures.
Well, thank you very much, Drew. And it was a pleasure chatting with you today. I hope some of what I said is useful. You take care now.
Awesome. Thanks, Ed. You too.
Hey everyone, thanks for tuning in to today's episode. I'm fortunate enough to share these amazing people with you. If you'd like to support the show, you can follow our Patreon, which can be found going through our website link listed below, or place a 5-star rating depending on what platform you are listening to. Thanks again, and catch you in the next episode.